The valley's main source of water is running out. Low levels in the reservoirs that feed the Rio Grande have prompted water restrictions on farmers and cities.
The direct cause of us going out of business is the lack of water.
Mexico is part of the problem.
Mexico's promised to refill our supply and pay a portion of their debt, but will it come fast enough as we enter a hot summer?
You know, we're just trying to hang on until next year.
Over the next half hour, our special Valley Without Water. We'll explain the situation we're in now and how we got there, and the plans Valley leaders have now so we have more water available in the future. Thanks for joining us. I'm First 45 Chief Meteorologist Tim Smith.
And I'm Christian Von Preissing. Right now, this is how much water we have left going into the summer for the 1.5 million people in the valley who depend on the Rio Grande. This shows us how much water the U.S. has, how much Mexico has, and how much empty space is in our reservoirs.
Looking at it differently, this is how much water the U.S. has out of the space it owns in the reservoir. The combined storage of both of our reservoirs is at about 22%. Here's a big picture look at our water system. We're here in the Rio Grande Valley. Of course, the river starts in the mountains of Colorado, way up here, and it flows down through El Paso. For all practical purposes, there are two parts of the Rio Grande, the Colorado to El Paso part, which is considered the upper Rio Grande, and then the rest of the river down to the valley, which we consider the lower Rio Grande. The lower Rio Grande is fueled by several rivers in West Texas and northern Mexico. The problem is the flow of water is much lower than ever before.
Other Texas cities have more than one source of water, but the Rio Grande is important for the valley because it is our only river. Experts tell us water from the Rio Grande makes up more than 95% of the water we use here in the valley. The impacts we're seeing here now are to agriculture. Cities get water first. Whatever's left goes to irrigation water for farmers. Because of that, a lot of farmers are leaving their fields bare. Citrus growers are being challenged and some have sold their fields. Others have switched what they're growing. Sugarcane fields were common across the valley, but the crop needed a lot of water, and without it, farmers started to produce less, which caused the sugarcane mill to shut down last year, wiping out a once multi-million-dollar industry.
I've been farming in the Rio Grande Valley for 31 years, and I simply have some land that I cannot plant because I don't have enough water to farm.
Valley farmers were estimated to lose $500 million in revenue last year. Water utilities have also paid more.
2023 and 2024, we have spent probably $500,000 on push water.
Even though cities have the first pull of the water from the Rio Grande, some water providers are starting to pay more to get their water delivered. All that puts more expenses back on the taxpayers. North Alamo Water Supply Corporation started charging water users who use more than 10,000 gallons to cover that cost. The East Rio Hondo Water Supply Corporation paid at least $500,000 in 2024. What is push water and what exactly are acre feet? Christian Von Preissing takes us a few different places and explains.
More and more these days, irrigation canals like these are not being used or are not being used to full capacity. In a normal year, a city's share of the irrigation water would be about 10% of the flow in a canal. 90% of that flow goes to agriculture. Cities use about 280,000 acre feet per year. In a good year, agriculture uses about 1 million acre feet per year. Looking at the data from another perspective, you can see how the city's share of that flow is just barely enough to fill the bottom of the canal. It takes water to push water. The more water you have available, the better the flow. A small amount of water, as you can see, will stall and not reach its destination. A large amount of water will flow more properly. The longer the distance, the more push water is needed. As far as acre feet, that's a measurement that farmers use. It's the amount of water it takes to cover 1 acre of farm field in 1 foot of water. An acre foot is enough to fill 2 of these Olympic-sized swimming pools. Valley cities use 280,000 acre feet a year. That would be about 500,000 of these swimming pools.
From a weather perspective, here's how our watershed ended up in this state, both in terms of rainfall and temperatures driving evaporation. Of course, the Rio Grande begins in the mountains of Colorado. It's all snow melt initially, filling the river, and from there to El Paso. That's considered the upper Rio Grande, but not much water gets past El Paso into what we consider the lower Rio Grande. So starting in the Big Bend, we basically start over, and all these rivers feed in and they fill Amistad Reservoir, which is near Del Rio, and then downstream Falcon Reservoir, which of course is between here and Laredo. The problem is rainfall in the watershed has been less than 50% of normal over the past few years, and in many cases as low as 10%. That's causing those rivers to dry up. One by one, they're going away. The rivers dry up, the reservoirs start to go down and they get smaller and smaller. And before you know it, we have a serious water supply problem here in the Rio Grande Valley. Now add to that, the government of Mexico has built a lot of dams on these rivers that you see over here in northern Mexico. That's holding back waters for their farmers so it can't reach Falcon or Amistad. Now take a look at Amistad in 2016. This is what it should look like when it's full. Okay, see how big that lake is? Well, now look at this. This is a picture from last year. Look how much it has shrunk. It's down to about 20% of capacity. And Falcon downstream at 13% of capacity.
Evaporation is taking away some of our water. We're looking at side-by-side graphs that show the increase in average temperature in the watershed. That increase in heat is driving more evaporation. The blue dots show the average high temperature for each year since 1908. That was 117 years ago. The National Weather Service recorded the high temperature every day. The red line shows the upward trend in temperature, average highs in El Paso, Del Rio, and Brownsville. In El Paso, that increase was a 4-degree difference. In Del Rio, also a 4-degree difference. And in Brownsville, the average high temperature was 81.5 in 1908. It's now around 84.5. That's a 3-degree difference. Climatologists believe across the globe the temperatures have increased 2 degrees during that same time period, driving more evaporation.
That data shows cities along the Rio Grande are heating up faster than the global trend. When we come back, we'll take you to an iconic area along the river, the Santa Elena Canyon. We'll show you why the water that once flowed through the canyon is drying up.
And the biggest controversy right now over how much water we can get from Mexico.
South Texas families had endured for decades.
Well, we need to get Mexico to get caught up on their water debt.
Yo creo que en estos días se va a llegar a un acuerdo razonable.
And we're taking a look at if Mexico has enough to send us more water.
The Mexican government has agreed to deliver up to 420,000 acre-feet of water between now and October.
This is definitely a win, so this is going to get us into the playoffs, but we need to go back to practice Monday morning and keep on working hard.
That's the latest promise for new water deliveries after U.S.-Mexico negotiations this spring. Those 420,000 acre-feet are more than a third of what Mexico owes the U.S. right now.
This is the relationship between the U.S. and Mexico when it comes to sharing water. The United States gives water to Mexico from the Colorado River out west. Mexico gives water to the United States through the Rio Grande. A lot of that water comes from 6 of its smaller rivers, including the Rio Conchos, which is the largest of the rivers in the state of Chihuahua. That was all agreed to by a treaty signed in 1944. Mexico gives the United States 1.75 million acre-feet of water every 5 years. That boils down to about 350,000 acre-feet per year. Now currently, we're at the end of the 5-year cycle, and so far Mexico's only given the U.S. about 750,000 acre-feet. That's just over a third of what's due by the end of this year. Experts, including the former head of the IBWC, questioned if Mexico can make good on their promise.
The other thing which I have not seen in any sort of media is how does Mexico plan to achieve the next 5-year cycle in addition to what's going to be in arrears? What is the plan for annual deliveries?
Former head of the IBWC, Dr. Maria Elena Geiner, echoes what experts are saying, that Mexico does not have enough water anymore to meet obligations to the United States. Under the treaty, Mexico can delay its delivery if it's experiencing extraordinary drought. Mexican officials are claiming that that's the case. This map from the North American Drought Monitor shows that western Mexico and Chihuahua are experiencing extremely dry situations. Some places haven't received water in years. Geiner feels Mexico is mismanaging their water.
2023, Chihuahua got a lot of water that filled their reservoirs. And so during this 5-year cycle, Chihuahua chose to consume 4 million acre-feet of water, yet only deliver about 10% of that to the U.S. users. So right now, you are correct. They don't have much water, but during the 5-year cycle, they did have water to share, and they chose not to.
The White House disagrees with Mexico's claim that they are experiencing extraordinary drought.
Valley farmers say the latest water delivery of 420,000 acre-feet is the most progress they've seen in years. That announcement comes after President Trump called on Mexico to deliver the water it owes. The White House threatened tariffs and sanctions. Right now, Texas farmers are demanding 1 million acre-feet of water. That's as much water as Houston uses in 2 years. Valley cities need about 280,000 acre-feet a year. Mexico responded to those demands.
pues va a haber una entrega inmediata de un número determinado de millones de metros cúbicos que se puede dar de acuerdo con la disponibilidad de agua que existe en el verano.
Since April, Mexico has transferred 67,000 acre-feet of water to the U.S., which is stored in the Amistad Dam.
Over the last year, we've kept an eye on that key spot, the Rio Conchos. It's where Mexico's water delivery meets the Rio Grande.
We went to witness how the West Texas region has been drying out. Here's what photojournalist Israel Almeida and I saw from Big Bend. It's daybreak at the most iconic spot on the entire U.S.-Mexico border. But the river that carved this canyon has been turning into a dry riverbed. This is the Santa Elena Canyon at Big Bend National Park. It's amazing to think that over millions of years, this was carved out by the Rio Grande. Now the walls of this canyon are the division line between the U.S. and Mexico. It's an important heritage site for both countries. We visited the Santa Elena Canyon, 1,500 feet tall. The outline can be seen from space. Sometimes it's home to a river, but more often, it's completely dry. In the summer of 2024, the canyon turned dry as a bone, leaving visitors.
He just kind of ruined his morning.
People were getting stuck as the cracks of the surface fully dried out.
After like just one step, I just found myself like knee deep in mud.
Yushin Zhao is experiencing his first visit to the canyon, but finding a massive dried out riverbed.
Definitely strange for the size, the scale of it here.
More people encountered this for the first time.
Beautiful, everything else, but yeah, the bed is not ideal, sort of sad.
The Santa Elena Canyon in far west Texas is just one of many places that depend on the Rio Grande. We followed it upriver to an important tributary where nearly all the water for 4 million people downriver comes from. This tributary is where the Rio Grande meets the Rio Conchos at the historic town of Presidio. I'm looking at islands forming, I'm looking at mud, sediments building up. The Rio Grande upriver is just a tiny little speck of water. We used a drone to get as close as possible. This is the water that we depend on from Mexico, and there's very little coming downstream. When we came here last May, the two rivers appeared to be little more than the size of drainage canals, and it's been that way for the vast majority of the time.
Everybody involved should be embarrassed.
Terry Bishop and his family farms in this area where the two rivers meet.
What's coming out of the United States down from El Paso barely qualifies as an irrigation ditch. And what's out of Mexico is, the reality is that Mexico is letting just barely enough water come down to the conchos that it's moving and say, okay, well, it's a river because it's moving.
He says he's reduced his production to one crop. Years ago, his family grew onions, cantaloupe, honeydew, and watermelon on thousands of acres. Presidio is one of the oldest settlements in North America, farmed for over 3,500 years. By 1681, the Spanish here called it La Junta de los Rios. The meeting of the rivers.
It's very historic, very fertile. All this area here is there's very little of it, but it's very fertile. But it's what you're going to do with that water.
And without an adequate river flow, other businesses can't operate.
I haven't seen the water in a couple years.
Charlie Angel is owner of Angel Expeditions. He walks us through the salt cedar trees to the old riverbed.
This is it. So you see where it is up there?
Yeah.
And normally it's flowing down the connect. It stopped flowing. It's just stagnant pools.
Yeah.
In this area, the prospect of river rafting draws the interest of a lot of potential tourists. But in recent years, most days were not possible to raft.
3 dozen trips that canceled because we couldn't do the river. We tried to switch them to a hiking tour or a driving tour or something else. And most people, they came here to do a river trip, so it's not happening.
This stretch of river has been dry for the vast majority of the last 2 years.
See, Ma?
Spots like these show the environmental impacts of the lack of water. Fish and other river-dwelling wildlife became stranded in these disconnected pools of water in the bed of the Rio Grande.
Yeah, if you look, you can see there's a few dozen there, probably 50, 60.
And they have nowhere to go.
Got nowhere to go, and nothing to eat at this point but each other, which they will.
He says there used to be more species here, But over and over, the river keeps drying up and killing the populations. The source of the water that we depend on is not doing well.
If it's the same way in 10 years, there may not be any farming in this area.
Much of it is drying out, with no relief in sight.
You need a river. That's what it was supposed to be.
The last 2 years, it's been dry in the spring and summer in the Big Bend region. These are recent drone shots of where the Rio Conchos meets the Rio Grande. This is how it looks right now. Water levels are higher than normal after recent rains. And while water's flowing now, the river is expected to run dry again. Up next, new strategies for more water from the Gulf to the ground. The latest idea is happening right now in the valley to protect the future of our water supply. Valley cities are looking away from the Rio Grande to find other sources of water. Groundwater is one option.
So far, that's the direction for Raymondville, Mercedes, Alamo, Brownsville PUB, and the North Alamo Water Supply Corporation. The problem is groundwater in the valley is salty and the salt needs to be removed. That process is called reverse osmosis.
Right now, North Alamo produces about 44 million gallons of water a day. 10 million of that is through reverse osmosis. So if we were to lose the Rio Grande River, we would at least have that to provide to our customers.
Stephen Sanchez is the general manager at North Alamo. He says reverse osmosis used to be a costly process, but now, gallon for gallon, he says it's cheaper to treat groundwater than it is to treat water from the Rio Grande. Another option is the Gulf. Desalination makes salt water usable. The Laguna Madre Water District plans to treat ocean water. In May, voters approved a $59 million bond that will go toward their plans for a desalination project. Right now, the Water District is testing a pilot version of the desal system.
Another new idea is underway. It's using drainage water as a new water source. The Hidalgo County Drainage District and Commissioner David Fuentes are leading that project. They started with tests in the Delta area. By 2030, a water treatment plant would pull water from a reservoir to provide 5 million gallons a day. They've done water filtration tests and received state approval for the filtration method. They're now seeking additional funding to build up to 4 reservoirs and plants. And when we come back, how other parts of the state are turning wastewater into something usable and the plans to do it in the valley.
Other parts of the state are also trying to make the best use of our limited water.
In El Paso and the surrounding region, they recycle that precious resource from wastewater. This is what photojournalist Israel Almeida and I saw during our visit. Across the nearly 2,000-mile watershed of the Rio Grande, the river is dammed at several locations. Standing side by side, the reservoirs of Falcon and Amistad in terms of capacity is Elephant Butte in New Mexico, just north of El Paso.
So they said at one time it used to be all the way up here.
The levels at Elephant Butte are low and dropping. The lake here at Elephant Butte is filled up by the mountains upriver, but it's still recovering from a historic low. That historic low happened 4 years ago when the lake reached 2 to 3%.
If we don't get any rain and they release what they've allotted, we could easily go back to that 3% mark.
Whiskey is to drink and water is to fight for.
Lynn Kammerer runs Lynn's Landscape and Fencing outside Elephant Butte. In these parts, when customers come to him, he suggests native plants that require little water. In many parts of this region, homes limit their green space and make use of rocks and native vegetation.
They come in here from Montana and Wyoming or Missouri. I go, okay, forget everything.
The area between Elephant Butte and El Paso is a 100-mile stretch of fertile farmland where water rights come first.
You got the green chili capital of the world. You got the biggest pecan producers in the United States.
All that water needs to feed farm fields in New Mexico, flowing downriver and feeding El Paso. 2 million people in El Paso and Juarez depend on the Rio Grande.
And ultimately, the finished water that comes out of here, it's drinking water quality.
They're treating water that comes out of people's toilets.
We use it for aquifer recharge. We use it for the electric power plant.
Water Resources Manager Scott Reiner says El Paso has been reusing sewage water for 6 decades. It's called reclaimed water, and the water's delivered back to the aquifer that the city uses for part of its water supply. But what's different now is they're getting ready to send the reclaimed water straight back to people's taps.
Singapore, Israel, other parts of the world, water-stressed portions of the world, they are doing this. But in the state of Texas, we'll be the first for a direct potable reuse project.
Reinert says their current system already cleans sewage to drinking water standards, but the new system, called Advanced Water Purification, will do more.
So we use the ozone to kill them or to sterilize them.
The treated wastewater will also go through chlorination, UV exposure, and reverse osmosis filters.
Pharmaceuticals, birth control, caffeine, these are all things that the public, to get the public buy-in, you need to get rid of some of those things.
This spring, they broke ground on the Advanced Water Purification Project to produce 12 million gallons of water per day, about 10% of El Paso's water.
It is the future of water in the state of Texas, really.
Well, North Alamo Water Supply isn't using wastewater recycling yet, but they do say it's a direction they plan to go in the future.
Over the last half hour, you've seen just how valuable water is. Our supply is limited, and without a big rain in the right areas, it won't be replaced.
A solution isn't easy, but Valley water utilities are finding new sources of water instead of relying on the Rio Grande, and lawmakers are working with Mexico to repay their water debt.
We thank you for joining us tonight. I'm First Warn 5 Chief Meteorologist Tim Smith with Christian Von Pricing. On behalf of our entire team, good night.